Cullen live in 1 minute. Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live at pghcitypaper.com. Email your questions and comments to Lynn at pghcitypaper.com.
Oh, hello. Oh, my God. I just saw one of my buttons is unbuttoned. There we go. Hey, hi. How you doing? It's Tuesday. I know that because Susan's on the phone. You know how you get a little... Susan's on the phone. Falling. Susan, are you okay?
Yeah, I'm okay. Are you hearing me clattering around?
Yeah,
here,
I thought
sir?
maybe you fell off a chair. What the hell?
I'm just cleaning things up while I was waiting for you. Never mind. I'll stop now.
Stop! Go sit in a quiet place.
Okay.
Okay. So, just jumping right in here, the big news is that there's been this
Accord reached?
Well, thank you so very much.
How did I know what you were trying to say?
Well, so anyway, there's been this accord reached. And, you know, this is one of those stories in the world's history that I, as a citizen of the world, always feel like, I don't know. How am I supposed to know? Is this good? Is this bad? Is this as good as bad? You know what? I really don't. Can we, do you have an opinion right off the bat? Is this good? Is this bad?
I don't know. I could argue both sides, and I don't think anybody will know for a decade.
Okay, so that's what's scary. So things get done. I mean, the nation, all these nations, blah, 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 and they did the accord, and there's all these people howling around the edges, you know, Republicans and Netanyahu, and saying, ah! Excuse me, I just startled Celine.
But, you know,
well,
the fact...
You just don't know. Okay, so, here.
You don't know, and because you don't know, do you refuse to try?
No.
I mean, you know, what's the benefit in sitting still with our heads, you know, under the pillow?
Okay, is no deal better than what is the best deal you could get? Is this and that? Here's what I just want to say. I do not pretend to know. And I will try.
And don't you think that we do think that this is the best deal that we could get and that it was worth getting?
I'm telling you, that's the question I don't know the answer to. I suspect I don't know.
I honestly
Who
don't
am
think.
I to know?
You don't know, but I don't think that Kerry and Obama
would throw us under a bus.
No,
right.
To what end?
I know. But they could also be being too optimistic or want to get... I don't know. Okay, here are the main provisions. Let's run down these, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because, again, it's way...
Because we don't know.
It's way beyond my pay grade. But as a citizen of the world, it is my responsibility to try to understand this stuff. Okay, so here. Iran, according to this deal, will reduce its current stockpile of uranium, the stuff that can be processed into bomb grade, by 98%.
There's a pesky 2% remaining. Can it breed?
I don't know. It will reduce it to 98%, and this is over, I don't know, it says for 15 years. Does that mean it reduces it immediately and keeps it at that level for 15 years, I guess?
Yes.
After which, it immediately reconstitutes it and sends us all into World War III.
Well,
No. I'm just... Okay. 2. Iran will reduce by 2/3 the number of centrifuges operating to enrich uranium at its primary processing center. Remaining centrifuges will get moved to a continuously monitored site.
right.
Taken together, the limits on fuel, the uranium, and the centrifuges would extend to 1 year the amount of time necessary for Iran to produce enough weapons-grade material for a single bomb if it should abandon the accord. I don't quite what. So
It would buy us an extra year
if they don't follow the rules.
right.
Okay, number 3, international sanctions against Iran will be lifted, allowing it to start selling oil again on international markets and using the global financial system for
Right.
trade.
So immediate effect number 1 is that oil prices fell like $1 a gallon or something.
Also,
$1 a
though,
barrel.
so their economy will now go up.
Right.
Okay. Number 4. An international arms embargo on Iran would be eased gradually.
For conventional weapons.
Yeah. With the pace determined in part by whether the International Atomic Energy Agency judges the Iranian nuclear program to be entirely peaceful. Okay, so they don't get any other arms until it's judged
Until we can verify that they are
supposedly
complying, right.
Okay, and 2 more. Should Iran be judged by an international panel not to be living up to the accord, the sanctions could snap back under an unusual mechanism. In other words, they immediately be sanctioned again. The panel would consist of the United States, Britain, China, France, Germany, the European Union, Russia, and Iran itself, with a majority vote sufficient to restore the sanctions.
Well,
That's pretty good. Okay. And the last thing. New restrictions prevent Iran for a set period of time from experimenting with designing warheads and conducting experiments on multi-point detonations and other nuclear weapons-related triggers. Okay, so they're not allowed to fool around with... So that's the key points. And right under it, I see, Scott Walker denounces deal. This will be remembered as one of America's worst diplomatic failures. I call on all congressional leaders to repudiate this agreement. Blah, blah, blah. Boehner tweeted, instead of making the world less dangerous, this deal will only embolden Iran, the world's largest sponsor of terror, by helping stabilize and legitimize its regime. Okay, so there you have it, and now everybody takes up their usual sides, and the back and forth begins.
Right.
And most of us, sit and go,
Most of us understand our places to be ants on the earth who have no say in the matter and have no choice but to trust that
well, let's hope.
the majority of people see fit not to blow us all up, because that's all we've ever had.
That's right. And sometimes we've been
Closer than others.
Yes, and sometimes the people who seem to run things in the world really mess up, too.
Yeah.
I don't know. Okay. Mostly I'm inclined to think it's okay, but gee whiz. I just wish
Did you see that our new presidential candidate, Scott Walker, passed the budget but changed the words from living wage to minimum wage and what you can get away with paying a worker in Wisconsin? The living wage being considerably higher, like $10 instead of $7.75, which it is right now. I mean, if That's where they're going. There was a whole article about Jeb Bush and his slip about
lazy people.
Yeah, if you don't have enough money, it's because you aren't working hard enough.
But Susan, that is what they think. That's what.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about all of the women I know,
right,
that I have worked with or employed over the years, all who stitched together an income by having 3 to 5 jobs.
Yeah, I agree. They scramble here, they scramble there. They don't have benefits. They're the hardest working people you know, poor people. So that brings me to what, I'm sorry. There's just, the Republicans really do, they like wars. They like punishment. And they like to punish.
I think you're looking at it the wrong way. They like feeling superior.
Well, okay, but they like to punish people for being poor.
Yeah.
Because they see that as somehow a moral failing.
Right.
They like to punish people by throwing everybody in jail. That was a Republican thing. I mean, you couldn't remember. I mean, if the Republicans had their way, literally, as it is, we have more people incarcerated in this country
per capita
than any nation on earth.
Right. But there is an interesting alliance forming over that. Everybody is realizing that this is not sustainable. So, like, we got the Koch brothers who are, teaming with, Libby people on the other side to figure out how to get nonviolent offenders out and to have, because it's unsustainable. It's too expensive.
Right. So it's not about the wasted humanity for Republicans. It's about the money. It's always about the money.
It's that it turns out that building a bunch of privately owned prisons and having them, run privately and then housing up to the limit. It's like chipmunks. You breed up to what the environment sustains. So they've now filled those, and I think that they really think that it's not a sustainable model.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it has anything to do with anything humanitarian.
No. Are you kidding?
So that's the only other take. It must have been found wanting in the sustainability and profitability.
Right. It didn't make them enough money or somehow it looked good, but it turns out it cost them more in other
cost money
ways.
And it cost profit.
It was a little more complex. Right. So, this is exactly what Paul Krugman has said. Exactly what I said about Trump's appeal the other day. I have said Trump is number one right now in appealing to the Republican base because he's absolutely saying exactly what they believe. I mean, sorry, that's it. It's not a big confusion. So here's what Krugman says about Trump. He's a belligerent, loudmouth racist with not an ounce of compassion for less fortunate people. In other words, he's exactly the kind of person the Republican base consists of and identifies with. It's clear that the very things that Upper West Side New Yorkers find detestable about him are exactly what endear him to the Republican base, which is basically people who see in him everything, even the big red face and the yelling that makes him their kind of guy. So when other conservatives say he's not really one of us, you don't buy it. Right?
No, the answer to that is either are we. He's one of us. You aren't. I mean, that's the fear. They want him to go away badly.
Well, he's not subtle enough. He's not the face they want to present. They want a cleaner face like a Scott Walker, looks like the boy next door. Not that.
And they're already writing puff pieces about his far more liberal wife, who's also, I think, 10 years older than he is.
God.
But a love story.
God help us. What they mostly like about Scott Walker is how he literally destroyed the unions in the state of Wisconsin. Destroyed them. Wiped him out.
Right, and is aiming now for the University of Wisconsin.
Right. He wants to kill one of the great state universities. Unbelievable.
And that's what it's hard to understand that logic.
I don't get it.
Why would you take one of the state's crowning jewels and try to intentionally destroy it? Especially when the state as a whole feels very proud of its university.
Right.
And likes its Badgers, and it's...
yeah, I don't get it. And in fact,
I don't get it. It doesn't... It's unlikely.
A lot of his Republican... cohorts in the legislature are pushing back on the university stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He's a scary guy, unbelievable, and he does win when he has enough money behind him, and he's got money behind him. Okay. Apropos of nothing, what do you think of Whoopi Goldberg still standing with Bill Cosby? John Oliver had this great little bit the other night on that. He had her saying, well, he hasn't been convicted of anything about Cosby. And then he reminded us how she stood with every man accused of attacking or raping somebody. Name me one.
Right, she took off after that woman who, talked about JFK and...
Okay, well, I didn't know that one. But she actually support the football player who knocked out his wife.
Right.
She actually said, well, you don't know what happened immediately before, and, many women might want... It was, and then there was another one, and another one, and another one, and she just sides with the men, no matter what. We're going to a caller. Hello?
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, you know what ticked me off for years when you're talking about wages and that, is these waitresses and waiters, they're making, I don't know, $3 an hour. And these damn companies, I can understand a mom and pop restaurant, maybe they can't afford it, I don't know. But they should at least pay the minimum wage, and then whatever tips they get should be on top of that.
Right. But they don't, I think $3 an hour might be high.
Yeah, it is
high.
What is it? Celine knows because she's been a waitress.
And
generally.
The damn bastard that did that was that son of a bitch that run last time, that Herman Cain. He's on the Restaurant Association, and he voted that way. He didn't want to change that. He did those peach of franchise or whatever the hell. 283. A greedy, rotten son of a bitch is all they are. I mean, you can't pay minimum wage, $7 something an hour or $8 an hour. Come on.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that always ticked me off.
Yeah.
But
okay. Well, what else is new?
Well, maybe we need to kick them in the ass or something to get them to change that.
Okay. Take a chill pill, will ya?
No, I'm not.
All right.
But I think
I remember when my daughter was a waitress in New York, and the way they did it is that they paid you coincidentally as much as they deducted in payroll tax and blah blah blah. You netted out zero on the paycheck. You worked for your tips.
That's all. You work for tips. Celine is shaking her head. Yes, that's exactly what they do. It is simply outrageous.
It's slave labor.
Yep.
That's what it is.
All righty.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay, I found it. Here's Whoopi Goldberg. She said about Cosby, he's not been proven a rapist in a court of law. And then here's some of the other... Roman Polanski, she said, I don't believe it was rape. Whatever that means. She also defended Mel Gibson. She said, I know he's not a racist. And despite the audio recording of him saying to an ex-girlfriend, quote, forgive me for this, here we go, you look like a fucking pig in heat, and if you get raped by a pack of niggers, it will be your fault. Yeah, Whoopi, great. and other things. I mean, there were more. Oh, she defended Chris Brown after he brutally beat up Rihanna. She's a friggin' piece of work. That's it for her in my book. That's it. You're done. Susan?
Yeah, I tend to agree. The incident that you aren't naming and that I brought up was when, and I can't remember her name, but it was the woman who was an intern in the White House and came forward and wrote a book about
JFK, right?
JFK, right?
Yeah.
And they had this woman on the View, and Barbara Walters was the ringleader of the ambush.
They attacked this woman.
They all got together and said that there was no reason for her to say anything other than to make money off of it. I mean, they just pounced on the victim, and I along with looks like hundreds of thousands, if not a million, people that day wrote in to say that they were just astonished at what they had witnessed and that none of us were going to watch again. They finally took down the page.
Women cannot necessarily expect their sisters to be in their corner.
Supportive.
No. I don't know what that's about. Okay. I'm jumping all over the place here. Can I take one more hit at a Republican?
Go for it.
Okay. This is a member of Congress from North Carolina. He's another Butte. His name is Robert Pittenger. And here's what he told this group. Oh God, I don't want to subject you to the whole thing here. My primary mission as a member of Congress is to serve my constituents, to serve my region, my state, my country, but I am here as an emissary for Christ. He said, I don't hold fault with those who believe different from me. They just don't know my Savior. They don't know the one who loved me and gave himself for me. And he went on to say, he was speaking to a group of Christians. I don't know what particular group it is, but listen to this. They applauded when he was saying what I've said already. They gasped when he said about the president, God is working his heart because we're praying for him, that he would know the love of Christ. I don't care what issue that we work on in public policy. It all comes down to the reality of Christ. And he said that God loved the president. And they gasped. So
at the very thought?
Yeah. So here's the thing. These are people who applaud that he is taking the message of his Savior and seeing that as his primary responsibility as an elected member of the House of Representatives. And then as the people he's talking to understand their message of the Savior, it's that, of course, the president is not a Christian, I guess. What? And is not loved by God. What? I mean, I don't. You know what, Susan? I can't figure these people out. I just don't understand. They think they're Christian, and then they're so un-Christian. We saw what Christians were when the African American Christians of the AME Church responded unbelievably with forgiveness to the person who massacred their loved ones. And being a good Christian is not easy. It's all these people who think it's easy. It's about condemning other people, not loving them. Why do they think that?
I don't know.
What don't they get about the message they're supposedly sharing with people? What are they sharing? All right, never mind.
Well, what they're sharing is that God loves me. It's a very narcissistic, view of what God wants. It's all about, look what it gets me.
God. In regard to server wages, Ray writes, I know young servers at the pub I frequent that owe money to the owner at the end of the week to cover taxes.
Yep.
Oh, my God. And then he says, does BNY Mellon get audited weekly? No. For the love of God, pay your tab with a credit card, but tip in cash. That is correct. I know that's true. That's true. We got a caller. Hello?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes, well, you should be.
Told myself I wasn't going to call today.
All right.
Then you said something. I can't get into the head of these.
Well, that's a shock.
Yeah, right. I said something?
Yeah, you said something. I couldn't believe it on the talk
Okay,
show.
what
But
did I
anyway,
say that made you crazy?
It didn't make me crazy. It was that you said, I can't get to the head of these Christians. Then you said the Christians from that guy, they gasped. But then you said these African-American Christians who are Christians. And I went, nah, I don't think so. What people are, what religious people are all their religion is a reflection of themselves. So they're all Christians because they're saying they're Christians, but you only get different Christians because you have different people. Everybody views their Christianity in a different way. There's not one type of Christian is what I'm trying to say. There's as many as there are people who call themselves Christians.
But what I was trying to say is if you look at what Jesus supposedly preached, the AMA Christians were understanding that and living that message more so than these hate-filled jerks that make up so much of the base of the Republican Party.
Jesus says things like to leave your family and follow him and all kinds of stuff that most the modern moral people would think was, kind of immoral.
That sounds like a cult follower.
Yeah. You can find anything in the Bible, even in the New Testament, that fits your own brain.
Right.
And that's all it is.
That's right.
Yeah. I was with you until you said, these people...
right. But we all know your bias against...
Biased against what?
Religion, in general.
I don't want to say... I say I'm biased against bad ideas. I'm biased against race, ethnicity, all that stuff. All these bad ideas that humanities came up with to separate themselves into little tribes and...
Well, I think that because humanity has always felt the need to separate itself into little tribes, it's human nature. That's all I'm saying. So, I mean, if you're
animal nature. I'll put it that way.
okay, you're railing against human nature. What the hell? I mean,
I like to call it animal nature.
Okay.
Because we humans have a bigger, more analytical brain.
And we should
resist animal nature. Of course, we're pack animals, and but we know it, so we can resist it. Most pack animals don't know that they're pack animals, but we know it, so we can resist it.
Well, as you said before, there are Christians, and then there are Christians. There are humans, and then there are humans. There are humans that are aware of this and can resist, and then there are humans that don't think about such things for 1 second.
That's right.
There's no resistance at all. Right. Okay.
Yeah. But I think we're getting better and better as time goes on.
Because
we just said, okay, gay marriage is fine.
And you know what? And now the Pentagon just said transgenders can serve in the military, no problem at all, and we're going to expedite that.
Yeah, and the Marines just fired their first woman commanding officer.
Yeah, but what'd she do?
She wanted her female soldiers treated the same way.
Are you
And
sure
she
that's
was
what got her
brash and
fired?
aggressive?
Is that? She was
which would have
brash
been
and aggressive.
admired had she been a man.
Really? See, I haven't
Yep.
looked at the.
I haven't heard about that.
All right, okay, we got to look that up.
Yeah. You have the equal rights to be fired.
And that's
If you
why.
are a Marine.
Yeah, and you want equal rights? Okay, well then don't scream if some guy punches you in the nose. You have the equal right to punch him right back.
That's right.
Okay.
All right, I'm done.
Goodbye.
All right, bye.
Bye. Jeez.
No, she was interesting. What she was in trouble for was demanding that her female soldiers, young trainee Marines, were expected to do what the men did. They were not, and therefore they were disrespected. And she thought, well, with a little training, I mean, one of the things is they didn't shoot as well. Well, teach them. So she just changed up their training and was hard on them and wanted them to excel like they should if they chose to be Marines. And within a year, she had 98% of her women passing the test.
And she gets fired?
And then when they had their first long 9-mile march or something, at the end of it, there's a ceremony, and she saw these chairs sitting there, and she said, "What are those chairs for?" And she was told they're for the women soldiers that needed to rest after that. And she said, "Do the men have them?"
That can't be why she was fired.
Well, she kept arguing about all this stuff, and she was irritating her commanding officer and frequently jumped over him when he just routinely,
Well, yeah, so if she was routinely jumping over a commanding officer, that'll get you fired.
Well, it did.
Oh.
But when you heard what she was doing...
Well, she wasn't doing it in the right manner. I mean, it is, after all, it's the friggin' Army. It's the military.
No, well, it's the Marines.
It's the
and they
Marines,
have been
that's right.
the most resistant and with the highest rape of enlistees or sexual assault charges or something. It was an interesting article. It's worth noting.
Okay.
Because we declare things to be equal does not mean that they are.
Indeed. I love this Pope! Did you see the latest thing? Oh, God,
He's going to consider the criticism and think about it.
I just love him. So he has this thing that after he's, been done, when they're flying back to the Vatican after a trip, he comes back in the plane and has just like a freewheeling news conference with all the reporters who are there. And on his way back to the Vatican after his South American trip, some German reporter said, you spoke so much about the poor people of the world and the rich of the world, but you don't speak about the middle class. And the Pope said, "Thank you. It's a good correction. Thank you. You are right. It's an error of mine not to think about this." And then he started thinking about it. This is just off the top of his head, and he said, I speak often about the poor because the Bible obligates me to do so because they are at the heart of the gospel. Another thing that all those Christians in the Republican base don't know. And then the Pope said, then on the middle class, there are some words that I've said, but a little in passing. But talking about the common people, the simple people, the workers, that is a great value, no? But I think you're telling me about something I need to do. I need to delve further into this.
Yep.
I love this Pope.
It's called taking a note, and it's an important lesson for all people everywhere to learn to do with grace.
I just, God.
Yeah,
Yeah.
This is a guy that just is modeling his beliefs and his values.
After his
which
savior.
Most of us spout and few of us do.
I know. He really is the real deal.
Yeah.
And he also was told that a lot of what he said in, like, Bolivia was not going over real well in the United States. And he even said to that, well, then we'll have to talk. He said that's then an opening for us to talk. I cannot wait to hear his speech to the Republican-controlled U.S. Congress.
You think anybody will...
Not show? Or heckle?
Or heckle?
Oh, gosh. I want to watch John Boehner, assuming that he'll be sitting behind the Pope. I want to see John Boehner not squirm when the Pope essentially excoriates everything that the Republican Party advocates and stands for.
Right.
Because Boehner's a good Catholic.
Right.
All right, so there was this really weird thing in the science section today of the New York Times, and I don't understand the purpose of such inquiry. It turns out there's something called embodied cognition. It's an area of science. Embodied cognition. And it studies the interconnection between our bodies and our feelings. So that they find when somebody is holding a warm cup of coffee in their hands and they meet somebody, a stranger, they generally consider the stranger a nicer person than if they're holding a cold ice drink when they meet them. Is that weird? So if they're holding something warm, they are more warm-hearted. If they're holding something cold, their assessment is more cold-hearted. Yes.
Well, but we know this. We know this in bigger things. So why not? Why isn't everything that we do? It's very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole thing about, if you laugh, even fake laugh, it produces
helps.
endorphins.
Yeah.
If you walk around wearing a smile, you're informing your brain to be happier.
Well,
I mean, and now there's this sort of mindfulness training where if you spend 5 minutes a day meditating, praying, whatever you want to call it, and you write down 3 things a day that make you feel good about yourself or that you see as a positive in your life, and you do one random good thing for no good reason to someone else every day, in a period of a couple of weeks, you start feeling better about everything. It changes your total outlook because instead of focusing on all the negativity around you, you start purposefully.
Okay, that makes looking at the positives.
Right.
But you know what? But that's head. This is about, here's another part of the study. The study, by the way, comes out of the University of Pittsburgh. If you ask people to stand on one leg and then to talk about their important relationships, their marriage or whatever, as opposed to people standing on 2 legs and talking. People who are feeling a little physically unstable on one leg perceive their relationship as more unstable than people who are standing on 2 feet perceive theirs. Now, how weird is that?
That's pretty weird.
They asked people standing on 1 foot and people standing on 2 to write notes to their loved ones, and the ones by people who were on one foot were much more negative and sometimes complaining, and the ones when people are on 2 feet were just nicer and stuff. Oh my God. So the findings suggest that when contemplating the state of your relationship, you should really stand with both feet firmly on the ground or sit in a very sturdy chair. And because even if you're sitting at a wobbly table as opposed to the same thing happens. If there's instability, if your body is feeling a little wobbly, you perceive...
It communicates that to the far reaches of your brain.
Yep.
Well, so all of this goes to say that's why I brought up the other thing, which is the new rage in therapy is this thing called mindfulness.
Yes.
And it is basically is telling you to be mindful of all of the factors around you rather than focusing on one little one or allowing that to, not whatever it is, knock you off your center.
You know, I once went to for a while to this mindfulness training thing at one of the hospitals here. This must have been about 10 years ago. I forget why I did it, but I think I don't know. I was just trying. It's more sort of like trying to get my head a little...
Trying to see if it worked.
Yeah. And, I mean... Yeah, I mean, I remember the first day what they did, there was a bunch of us sitting around in a circle. Some of the people there were there to learn how to use their minds to feel less pain. They were people who had chronic pain. Mm-hmm. But the instructor passed out raisins and gave each of us a raisin. And we all were told to put it in our mouth, not eat it, just put it in our mouth. And then we must have spent 20 minutes with that raisin in our mouths and just feeling the texture of it, putting our tongue over it, seeing if we tasted anything. We ended up consuming the raisin, but I swear it took a half hour. So for anybody who wants to lose weight, if you eat mindfully, you'll finish...
It could be a long process.
Yeah, you'll finish breakfast at about midnight. But every taste you put in, you note the texture, you note maybe what happens in your nose, and then you and that is, you can eat mindfully like that, which is really a way to slow down. Or you can simply lie down on your back, close your eyes, and listen to the sound. Which actually, Susan, our great Aunt Hannah,
of course,
had me do.
And what that is basically meditating.
That's meditating. She once, this was a wonderful woman who was...
who danced with Martha Graham.
I don't think she danced with Martha
Graham.
Yeah,
way back in the beginning she did.
She did. But she was a modern dancer and a wild child in a way, and wild...
And great beauty.
Incredibly beautiful. And I lived with her during a very troubled period of my life when my parents had probably pretty much had it with me. She took me in, and I was helping her clean one day. We were in her living room, and we were cleaning, and all of a sudden she said, lie down. And, with her, you just did whatever it was. So I lay down on the floor, and she joined me, and she said, listen. And it was a bird. It was a bird outside. She's cleaning, she hears a bird, and decides, stop! Lie down! Let's listen to this bird.
Which I might point out is why her house looked the way it did. My favorite thing about Hannah was that she was almost always, when at home, if she wasn't in her leotard, she was in a house coat.
She was always in a bathrobe.
A bathrobe with a brooch on it.
And she had this, I pulled my thing out. She had this wild hair.
Long
wild hair. And they're always like hairpins. You always found hairpins all over the place. You'd sit on a chair. Hey! There's a hairpin here, a hairpin there. I remember Sue's the first time she met Cullen, my ex. He was wearing, for some reason, a ripped T-shirt. He had on a T-shirt and it had like a rip here and maybe another hole over here. And she goes up to him and says, Oh my, look at that. It's so interesting. And he's looking at her like, what the Whoa, what? Oh my, she said, did you do, again, she thought everything was meaningful. So, yeah.
She was just a hoot.
Great character. Man. Great character. They don't make them like that anymore. Can I read you one thing?
Yeah, probably.
Good answer. Okay, this is written by somebody. I don't even know who wrote this. But it's somebody who, of course, I think is brilliant. But I think it's really written well. Can I just read a little?
Yes.
It's about one of my favorite topics now because I worry so much about the young people these days. Okay, so it starts this way. I despair for the kids these days. I really do. I didn't expect to feel this way. I was supposed to find them puzzling. I was supposed to think they were having too much sex or doing too many drugs and not listening to their wiser elders, gosh darn it. I was supposed to grouse that young people are always getting themselves into trouble, but instead I'm worried that they aren't getting themselves into trouble. They seem so fragile. They can't go off to college without calling their parents. Did no one ever take them aside and explain, college is for abandoning your parents, leaving them to worry about what you are doing? So she goes on to say, there is truly something terrifying to me about a generation of younger people that craves more adult supervision. Yet, that's what everyone from teachers to employers are reporting. A rising number of young people who seek to be tethered and don't seem to know what to do unless mom and dad are near. And then she goes on. She says, I know. People have always been worrying about the kids these days since time began. And yet, older people I talk to, one's old enough to remember seeing the low-speed train wreck that was my generation hurtling through college and into the workforce. Older people confirm my impression that this time really is different. And then she says the upper stratum of these kids really are going into college expecting to live in a sort of Nerf universe where nothing ever really hurts and there's always an adult to pick them up and some sort of personal concierge service. Anyway, on and on and on and on and on. And then she goes on to say how everybody is saying that kids today are also more anxious and more depressed than they used to be. And she says all of this stuff is making kids, all the parents in their lives, are making them more mentally fragile. Hovering parents rob kids of resilience and what psychologists call self-efficacy, the sense that they themselves are capable of producing the outcomes they want. that they still are functioning as closely supervised extensions of their parents, which is exactly the opposite of what we did. And she says, there's a flip side to this endless campaign to ensure that your children will be happy and economically secure. Because while middle-class kids today are rarely allowed to fail, the economically disadvantaged children are rarely allowed to succeed. The middle-class parents' desperate grasp for more or continued privilege is harmful to their children and to all other children. It's true. And it's part of it is technology. When we went away, you couldn't be in touch with your parents. I mean, a long-distance phone call was expensive.
Right.
There was no
and
sense.
You paid, every time you called, you paid for it.
Well, but now with parents' expectation that they can be in touch and kids' expectations that they can be. So if a kid bumps into a problem, any problem, rather than just figuring it out, they can call home. How do you ever end up growing up?
Well, I mean, even back before there were, cell phones, and when my kids were in elementary school, I remember thinking, you've got to start. The whole point of being a parent for those first 18 years is to get them ready to be successful without you. That's what your job is, nothing else.
But you do that, right, by just
But you do that like when your
out.
kid comes home and says, I don't like my teacher, I don't like this, you look into it a little bit to make sure that there's nothing too untoward going on, and then you explain to your child that one of the lessons this year that they will have to learn is how to get along with a teacher they don't like.
Exactly.
That's just part of what their education was going to be this year, and it might make things tougher, but that was the job. And that is not the way most parents react. Most parents react by going in and saying, how dare that teacher do this, or how dare that teacher do that, and my little Johnny is unhappy about this, and little Sally is afraid to go to school because of that. And we intervene at every single moment. There are tons of people like this.
I hate them.
Yeah.
They make life so hard for everybody.
They call their children at 8 o'clock every morning at college to wake them up, to make sure they're going to school. And they call corporate bosses to interview them to make sure they want little darling to work there. These things have been going on for years.
I know. There's a Wall Street Journal article from 2013 that Google even held its second annual Take Your Parents to Work Day. And parents actually coming with their kids to job interviews. And companies initially being so flipped out by that, but some seeing that it was depriving them of some pretty talented kids. And so now, here's a company headquartered in Milwaukee, actually, Northwestern Mutual. And it says the company does everything it can to accommodate the parents of college-age interns. The managers there call or send notes to parents when interns achieve their sales goals, and they let parents come along to interviews. They've even been known to visit parents at home. I got to tell you, that creeps me out so much, I can't even begin to tell you.
Yeah, I mean, there's really such a thing as boundaries, and they aren't only in sexual areas.
Oh, my God. But
it's a fundamental lack of understanding about what the role of a good parent is.
I guess. What happened? I want it to stop immediately. I think there is a backlash finally, but I mean, when I was raising my son, I was in the middle of this crap. Just in the middle. I was so astonished by it. Because Susan, you know what our model was. I had a model of parents who didn't pay any attention.
We had a model of basic abandonment.
But it was
but
good.
With great love.
We were loved. We were stable. There was a sense we knew what
we had a safety net.
We had a safety net. We also knew what expectations were for us, and it was just our job. We were allowed to be independent as children. How do you learn to be an adult?
We were expected to be independent as children.
It was an expectation. Now, last week, though, we were talking about all the craziness we got into, and I had a very hard road even in my 20s growing up. But that's what, I mean, I don't understand these parents that are so friggin' involved, that type their kids' term papers, that research for them, that do all the stuff that kid's supposed to do. I'm sorry. It's a thing that drives me crazy. And every time I come across something about it, I go nuts again.
Well, and the other thing is not only is it not helping your child by depriving them.
No, it's hurting them.
I mean, right. You're depriving them of the time in life that they're supposed to be safe to learn and fail and learn.
That's
and
right.
fail, and
when
that's
you're a
how
kid, you can learn and fail.
But on top of it, they're creating other problems, like these kids are anxious. And about the expectations that are going to be placed on them when they know damn well that mommy did the homework for 18 years.
That brings me to this one thing that this woman said. She said, the woman who wrote that first thing, she said, when I was on a book tour, a high school girl approached me and explained that while daring greatly and failing occasionally might be splendid in theory, because that's what this woman's book was talking about, she couldn't possibly afford to do that, to take any risks, because she was in an international baccalaureate program where 4.0 GPAs were few and far between. And then the author says this girl was 15. If you can't afford a single mistake at the age of 15, just when will be the right time to take some risks? When you're shopping for headstones? But this hyper-competitive culture that's been created by these parents makes the kids terrified, nervous wrecks. They think their life will end if they get a A-. And I think the other thing she noted, that while all of this attention and care is being ultimately harming these kids, it's also harming all the kids who don't have these hovering parents and all this crap behind them. Because there's no way they keep up with these
and at least K through 12 squeaky wheels get resolved.
Sickening. I remember when Sam was given a second grade teacher who I thought I was desperate that he didn't get. He got, of course. And I remember saying something, oh, God, he got Miss blah, blah, blah. And my friend said, well, go talk to the principal. And I said, no, they say that they don't want you to do that. You just accept. And she said, well, don't be silly. You just go talk to her and tell her that blah, 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 blah. And I thought about it, and then I thought, no, exactly what you said. I thought, no. I mean, part of learning about life is learning to deal with people who are not, your cup of tea. And then you know what happened?
What happened?
That teacher and Sam hit it off. She loved his sense of humor, where the teacher before had not. She just got the biggest kick out of him. And he liked her. So, parents, what do we know? I want all these parents, Back off. Please back off. Your kids are being harmed, not helped. And they're turning into assholes, too, that we're all going to have to deal with. Friggin' assholes. Scared, unsure, privileged.
Entitled.
And what?
Entitled.
Entitled. I know. People are sick of me talking about this. Hey! All right. Hey, Suze, New York Times.
Right, yes.
Suze, New York Times, sports section today.
Yeah, I bet.
Wait, they just said they did a thing about, okay, let's assess, since we have the first half of this baseball season in, let's assess where we are and who's meeting expectations, who's exceeding, and who's falling short. And they said, they start out by saying, well, okay, St. Louis. Yeah, I mean, they're just forget about it. St. Louis, everybody knew, was going to be great. And they're even greater than we thought they'd be. They're on track to win, 100? And I forget how many games this year. Just some outrageous number. But then they said the next team down that blew them away was the Pittsburgh Pirates.
Yay!
And they said because no one expected, all the cognoscenti did not expect the Pirates to be all that good this year. And they put the Pirates ahead of even Kansas City and the Astros in terms of surprise. Check this out. The Pirates. So,
yay! I'm happy for you guys.
I am too. We got St. Louis and we got the Pittsburgh Pirates. So, I'm happy.
Good.
I just hope it lasts a little bit. Anyway, so there. So Pittsburgh is maybe going to start knowing what it's like to have a great baseball team.
Right.
Which you know is a lot of fun.
It is a lot of fun.
Sure. It is. All right, well, I think I'm done.
Way to end on a happy note.
Yeah! Kill the birds!
Good luck with that.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, Suze. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. All right. We'll see you tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper, Steel City Media, and its advertisers.